a proud member of the Earglue Media family of podcasts.
Jaws Eats Jacques Cousteau will not be shown at this time, in order that we may bring you the following special program devoted to bathroom humor.
Oh, Will,
Yeah, Josh?
do you want to buy a rare television set?
What's so rare about it?
Well, this set used to belong to Sir Johnny MacDonald.
Oh, yeah, right. They didn't even have television in those days.
That's what makes it so rare.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah, Albert?
Today, my teacher told me I was brilliant, imaginative, and most original.
In your schoolwork?
No, for inventing excuses for not having my homework done.
Oh, brother.
And welcome back to another episode of The Film Appraisers, the podcast that evaluates your favorite films. Now, typically what we do on The Film Appraisers, each episode we're going to talk about a film and we appraise it, but we do so in each of the following categories: narrative, music, technique, uniqueness, and longevity. Each category can get a maximum of $20,000 for a possible $100,000 for the perfect film. And then we see where it stands next to the classics and other films brought to us by guests or listeners. But in a very eerily reminiscent way that I mentioned in the previous episode, for this episode, we are again veering from that formula, but it's for a very special reason. My name is The Password from WarGames, and today we've got a great show for you. I'm ready to get this one started. This is episode 28, The Films of Ready Player One. Now, with me as always is your senior appraiser, Joe Kane.
Hey, Josh.
Yeah.
So, what films are we going to discuss today?
Joe, the question isn't what films are we going to discuss today. The question is what films aren't we going to discuss today. But hold that thought for a second, Joe. Before we talk about that, let's go ahead and bring in our guests. If you're a listener to the other shows on the Earglue Media network of podcasts, then you probably know today's guest. They host The Basement, and that's a companion podcast for the Ready Player One novel. We bring them on today in celebration of the sequel to that novel from Ernie Cline, the aptly titled Ready Player 2 that was released on November 24th. So please welcome to the show very special guests, Albert and Will.
I'm Albert. Hey, how's everybody doing?
And I'm Will. Hey, great to be here.
So guys, for some of our listeners that are not familiar with your show, can you tell us what it's about, or to quote the Bobs, what is it exactly that you do here?
What is it exactly that you do here, mister? So Will and I do a weekly show where we take a chapter of the book and we get into the narrative, talk about what's going on in the world of Ready Player One for that chapter. But really the primary focus turns out to be the pop culture references. So we will take those pop culture references that are just very casually mentioned at times. Sometimes they're in your face and right on the nose, but we'll take them, we'll dissect them, break them down, get really into the weeds and give you a lot of background, trivia, talk about the finance, how well the movie did in terms of like box office, similar to what you guys do without all of the artistry that you guys weave into it.
Ooh,
Wow. Fancy word.
you.
I feel complimented. And I don't deserve any of it.
No, you really don't. But yeah, that's kind of the show. What am I missing, Will? Oh, we play games too. Tell them about the games we do.
Oh, we definitely do games. So at least once an episode, Albert or I will pick a category of a movie, film, or pop culture, typically something the other one knows quite a bit about, and then we'll basically test their knowledge in that area. And generally we fail miserably at that.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of failure in those games.
Not easy by any means.
Well, it is an absolute pleasure that you guys are both on the show and talk about some of these films that inspired Ready Player One. I've been looking forward to this for a while. I'm really excited about it. But first, Joe, we've got a small issue with our third host. Fortunately, we do have Todd here in the studio today, and
Awesome.
He brought a film that inspired Ready Player One. But unfortunately, our current network restrictions won't allow more than 4 people simultaneously record on the equipment. So Todd's got to sit this one out. Maybe next time, Todd.
We're better off.
Yeah, his film's not that great anyway.
I finally made the cut.
All right, gentlemen, we have a lot of ground to cover. Each one of you have brought a film related to Ready Player One. Joe, let's start with you. And if you would, just go ahead and read. We've got the IMDb log lines. Read your log line and then try to reference where in the novel Ready Player One that your film is mentioned.
So I chose Real Genius for probably the most unexciting reason. We'll get to that. But the IMDb logline here is teenage geniuses deal with their abilities while developing a high-powered laser for a university project. While the professor intends to turn their work into a military weapon, they decide to ruin his plans. None of that's realistic. And that's not how teenage geniuses were ever. But Val Kilmer's pretty cool in this, so whatever. Thanks to Albert, who helped me with the chapters. This is in like 6, 9, 10, 11, although it just seems to be in lists. It's always just listed as a movie that he liked. There was one reference that was good where he used Jordan as a reference point for Artemis, but other than that, it is basically just in lists and on walls.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Jordan's character. I think you and I talked about that last time. She's so exhausting.
I like her energy if it was just toned down a little bit. It's a lot of energy.
Yeah, she's a lot of extra, especially for the 80s.
Yeah, I feel like I would really enjoy her company for like 12 minutes.
I wasn't at an age where I could be that selective about my mates. I think I'm in, boys. I'm in, boys.
I'm still not. I still can't be selective about my mates.
Yeah, the actress that played Jordan, Michelle Myrink, she got used quite a bit in those Martha Coolidge films. It was that one. She was in Valley Girls. I think she was in The Joy of Sex, but she only did a handful, and then I don't think she did many more after that, did she?
I don't think so either. You know, I want to say we even talked about this, or maybe we didn't. It might have been in the notes that we didn't get to, but same kind of thing. And she's unfortunately a victim of a lot of actresses around this time, and actors, to be honest. There's just so many of these movies that came out, and they were kind of one and done. And they had little bits and pieces, little bit parts here, a little bit later down the road, couple years, but it never really amounted to a whole lot there.
Yeah, she only got 10 credits as actress, but definitely, I feel like there was a lot of couple of movie actresses in this era, especially that like I never saw in anything again. I mean, admittedly, I went back to see a lot of these, but there's a lot of these movies that just don't have a lot of faces you recognize.
Yeah, Tom Cruise, Scott Baio, these guys.
I mean, a few of them made it out. I'll be real, a few of them made it out, but I picked Real Genius mostly because when I was the time period between when this came out and when I was born, which would be this came out a year before I was born, and so it hit like I'm going to be on broadcast TV, network television all the time, right around the time I was like 4 or 5. So I just saw this all the time on TV as a kid in bits and pieces, and it has I remember thinking that Val Kilmer was the coolest dude ever as a little kid, and the first thing I always think of is the popcorn scene. The idea of that much popcorn was endlessly interesting to a 5-year-old boy. So I saw it on the list and I was like, man, we're going to talk about Real Genius. And then I watched it and I was like, yeah, there's some stuff to talk about here.
Yeah. I think that popcorn scene obviously is iconic. And well, didn't we break that down and talk about who was it that did the testing, like the actual live testing, because it had such an impact?
It was Mythbusters.
Yeah, that's right. They did that. And I can't remember if that was a bust or not. I think it was.
It was a bust, yes. It was. Can't be done.
Darn. I think you just need a satellite, right? You need a satellite with a laser, or a ship with a laser for it to actually work, and they couldn't acquire one of those.
And Joe, this was a good call, because growing up, I actually believe this is what college was like. It was somewhere between here and Revenge of the Nerds is where I thought college was. And then I went to college online, and it was nothing like that.
You were playing pranks on yourself?
Yeah.
But the problem is you need a William Atherton. That's who you need, which for me, I love when he's in films, because he's not like those evil villain type characters, but he's always just a great film jerk. And when he shows up in a movie, it's great.
He does play jerk very well.
Tell me, Mr. Vink, or was it Dr. Vinkton, what exactly are you a doctor of?
Another familiar face that I just forgot or maybe didn't realize at the time. Yuji Okamoto from Karate Kid 2, he's in this, and he gets the best line in the film. They're beauticians? About the Wanda Trustler School of Beauty. I might have rewound that scene a few times to watch it. It's pretty cheesy, but yeah, it was great.
So there's a lot of cheese in this one. This one's full of cheese.
Yeah.
And I kind of love all of it. It's also full of like just horrible inaccuracy. Like there's no way they're putting that car together in his bedroom. And this is not how lasers work. And just none of it works. But it's all okay. It's still pretty fun.
Yeah, it is. I always question, how did Laszlo get so much accomplished from the time we saw him reprogram the coordinates for the laser test, and then the next day he reveals he won the Frito-Lay contest, but he's got like his woman with him. He's got the RV. He's got all the
already.
junk.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, dude, you were able to do a lot.
Movie magic.
Time works in this the way it works in The Mandalorian. It doesn't exist. It just happens.
Yeah. Time is not absolute.
Hey, but we do get, I think it's like 3 musical montages in the film, right?
I do love the montages. I'm a big fan of montages.
So let's invoke the spirit of the basement here, and let's go around. 80s musical montage. Let's get a list going. What do we got here?
Some of the best ones?
That's the
Yeah,
best
some
one.
of the best ones.
The best one. Revenge of the Nerds fixing the house. You've got to
that's a good
put one foot in front of the other. The other foot down.
That's a great one.
Footloose is
Footloose
has got one.
Yeah, they've
that
got
is
a lot
good.
of. Let's hear it for the
Karate
boys.
Kid.
Yeah.
Karate Kid's got a good one.
Yeah, Karate Kids.
yeah.
Yeah.
All the
That
Rocky
one I really
movies have
like.
at least one.
I was just gonna say the
Every
Rocky movies
movie.
are like, when I think of montages, the first ones that come to mind always are the Rocky films.
And part 4 is probably the best one. That's like the most
Yeah.
uplifting one for me when he's trudging through the snow, and you've got is it Survivor that's doing that song as well? Hearts on Fire.
Hearts on Fire is Survivor.
It's
isn't
not.
it?
I want to say it is, but I can't remember if they did or not. I know they were.
I mean, they even have
Bound.
the morning montage when Apollo dies and he drives around in his car all sad.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
You can't not talk about the Top Gun scene too, the volleyball scene, playing with
That's
the boys.
right.
Is that a montage though? Does that qualify? I'm not going to give you
I think
credit.
it does.
And why are you always referencing movies with shirtless dudes?
They had an impact on me.
Listen, I've stayed in the same house as Albert. I know why he references dudes and shirtless dudes.
Hey, I've been in the same house as both you guys, and I slept on the floor.
That's true. You did. I had a couch, whatever. It's only one step up from the floor.
Yeah, I got a hotel. I knew better than to stay in the same house with you folks. All right. Anything else, Joe, that you want to talk about with Real Genius, or anything else anybody else wants to bring up why this is a great film and a really good film for Ernie to reference in Ready Player One?
I think one of the things that we talked about was the cereal scene in this as well. Like, there's a great scene in there with cereal. I don't know if you guys caught this. I can't remember when it happens, but one of the people come in and there's a whole thing of breakfast cereals, and you can see the boxes, and I just remember getting really excited even as a kid seeing that. But then going back and doing the rewatch, I got super excited because you think about our Discord channel that we've got where we talk about cereals, and that's always booming constantly. Yeah, but it was like, oh my gosh, anytime you get cereals in a show, I don't know what it is, but it's just, it brings back memories. But yeah, that was another piece of the movie that is pretty trivial, but if you're a big cereal guy, you kind of notice it.
Yeah, you two guys are in Texas here with me. I don't know if y'all been to that Star Wars themed restaurant up in Killeen, Texas, but they also have an all-you-can-eat cereal bar, and they just have all the cereals up above the bar.
I would do so much damage to that.
It's pretty interesting.
It would be disgusting. When I buy cereal, I have a cereal problem. When I buy cereal, I bring it home and I basically just sit down with the box and a gallon of milk and then wait until it's all gone. I can't just have it in the house.
That was serial killer among us.
Oh man!
I expected that from Albert. Yeah, I expected that from Albert, but not you, Will. Well, let's do this.
Disappointed.
Will, you're up next. You brought a film that I hadn't seen before, but I'm so glad you mentioned it because this has been.
I don't know if I'm glad or not. I'm still on the fence.
This has been my favorite part of doing research for this show, and maybe when we get to the music part, I'll admit that I might have gone a little overboard and purchased a little too many things for this film.
Hey, Will, before you read the log line, I'm going to make a request of you. If you could do so, please, as Jack Palance, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
I support this and insist on it. So let's go.
This is going to be terrible. With the aid of his companions, a man seeks to defeat his evil brother who has taken a nun hostage. I have chosen Hawk the Slayer as my film. It's referenced early in Chapter 9, and it's at a point in the story where Wade is walking through the tomb, and it's lit by, the usual torches, and it's got the musty scent about it, and Ernie references that to Wade, the environment feels like something he would see in Hawk the Slayer or Beastmaster. So, with this, I would say that the reason I picked this film is because it is the first, not just the great acting, not the fantastic cinematography, not the blending of music that sounds like Jethro Tull was trying to make the soundtrack to Saturday Night Fever. It's
the best soundtrack.
Don't forget the sorry, you're skipping over the fine fighting choreography that happens at the very end as well.
I've got a few things to say about that.
And you can't skip the silly string.
That's right. It's got the best
string.
spells. What I love about a good, sword and sorcery film is if you can replicate all of the spells at home with things you can just find around the house. That's always a win. But anyway, I picked this film for all of those reasons, and because it is the first. This movie predates all of the loincloth films of the early 80s. It predates Conan, Krull, the Princess and the Sword, all of the well-known Beastmaster, obviously. All of them kneel before Hawk the Slayer is a film. So for those that haven't seen it, so Joe, you hadn't seen this. I gotta get your review. What did you think of this film?
All right, I have a lot of thoughts. I have a lot of thoughts on this thing, and I don't even know where to start. The giant is just a kind of tall dude. I don't understand. This movie is basically a cartoon. I don't know how it exists. Okay, so let's talk about time again. Is Palance older than his father?
He is.
I don't know how that works either.
He's 3 years younger than his father, the actor who played his father.
It doesn't look that way for sure. There's two scenes: the silly string scene, and the scene when Palance has the whole crew tied up on pillars, and he gets hit. He's kicked in the face, and then he runs out to go see the witch, and he like spreads his little cape thing and crouches over and runs out yelling. Where I actually almost choked to death on my beverage because I couldn't handle what was happening on the screen in this film. If I had to describe this word in a very brief review, I would definitely just say this film definitely exists, and I don't know why.
And look, I can explain the time thing, right? So this is very common nowadays. Now, you may have not seen it very often in the 80s, but today it's very common. So clearly the king, Hawk and Volton's dad, right? He clearly married someone his own age, when he was a young man. Then when he became king and got rich, he dumped her. He marries like a 30-year younger woman than him, waits 20 years, and then has John Terry as a son. It's very common these days. So I don't have a problem with the age gap.
I don't know.
He was living the life before. He was living the life before we knew what that was even about.
And I'll give you that Bernard Bresslaw isn't great as a giant. He's just a tall dude. He's far more convincing in his other films where he plays the Cyclops in Krull. So same actor.
He's just a tall dude that talks like this because he's a giant.
I will not have you besmirch the name of Andre the Giant on this show. You could describe him the same.
Andre the Giant was at least extra strong like this, and Princess Bride is fantastic, and he's great in that. This I don't know. I didn't feel very gianty about this giant.
No, but he was taller than the other actors, and he was available for the budget that was available.
Exactly.
He had at least 4 inches on Palance.
Yeah. He's just the tallest guy that was cast available. That's all right. It was. So I think this film was, I guess compared to Joe's review, is a masterpiece. This checked all the boxes for me in something. I mean, it's just one of those films that if you, I mean, I cannot take anything serious in this, and you can't.
I very much liked it, just not for the reasons they wanted me to.
Oh, that's fair. That is definitely fair. It's one of those films that you're just gonna put on because it's just a crappy movie, but it's a really good crappy movie. I mean, there's so many great things. I couldn't keep up with some of the quotes. I had to just stop writing quotes down because they're so cheeseball. I couldn't keep up with it. Like Voltan's and Hawk's dad, his quote, "Quick, the coldness of death is in my limbs." I love that. Like I want to say you can't write that, but clearly someone did. Or Voltan. Oh, this one I love so much. Voltan says, "You were here, turning her love to hate with your silvery tongue." That one, love that one. But the best one. This is going, and yeah, call it a nerd act here, but my movie quote book, this one's going in it, and it's from Drogo, and he says, "I'm no messenger, but I will give you a message, the message of death." And
Yes, that's right.
It is everything that you want except good stunts. And which is unfortunate because the guy who did the stunts, I had to look it up. I couldn't believe how crappy some of these stunts were, but the guy who helped out with the stunt coordination is well established from like the mid 60s up until like the end of the 2000s. Eddie Stacy, he's got a lot to his credit, a lot of credits in his resume. The stunts for, I can't even list them all, but a couple that stood out. He did the stunts in Willow. He did the stunts in the Tim Burton version of Batman. He did the stunt coordination for one of Will's favorite movies, Gladiator.
Yes.
But none of them top the 1985 masterpiece, Morons from Outer Space. He did the stunts in that one. And I don't know if you guys have seen that film. Albert, I had hoped you had maybe seen it. All you have to do is watch the last 5 minutes of it, and the theme song will be stuck in your head for 41 years like it has in mine. And I
don't need that.
It is... what do they call it? An earworm? Or is that what they call it? That is exactly what it is. And unfortunately, the only way I've got exposed to that horrible movie is when we recorded films on television with our VCR, Showtime or HBO. You always caught the last 5 minutes of the previous show and then your movie. And that's actually how I ended up seeing, probably between the mid 80s to the mid 90s, I saw the last 2 minutes of Hamburger the movie equally amount of times that I saw Back to the Future.
Wow.
Because that's just how you did it. But I gotta say, I loved every part of this. I even went out and bought the vinyl soundtrack, and it is
you went deep on this. You went
wonderful.
Absolutely over the deep end on this.
Yeah.
Nah, it was definitely worth it. So good job, Will. I'm very, very happy with this one.
You may be shocked to know that it only took 3 weeks to write the screenplay. So,
no,
I would be shocked. I would be shocked that it took that long.
and Terry didn't write it alone, right? Terry Marcel, the director who also wrote this, he wrote it with the person who did the music, Harry Robertson, who actually is Henry Robinson, but had to change his name at some point in his life, and is an actual baron. He's a British baron, as it were.
Was it because of war crimes in movie making?
No, actually, it was because his first music gig he got, they wrote the check out to Harry Robertson, and so it was easier for him to change his name than get the check changed. Seriously, that's a true story.
Because they had already lost so much money.
The industry at its finest.
What I like about the music in this film, though, is like probably a quarter of this film is like a music video where there's somebody riding somewhere. It's usually Hawk, and the soundtrack's playing. And half of the times that you see those scenes, it shows the rider ride past the camera, and the camera lingers on an animal or a skeleton or like a snake or a lizard, and it's wonderful. It is absolutely wonderfully done.
I mean, even so, I've got all four up right now, and right now Hawk is fighting slow motion sword fighting Jack Palance, and like the choreography is not great, but it's extra bad because it's in slow motion. And I know if I could hear it right now, there would be like metal. This looks like a metal music video from the 80s, except for the fact that Palance just tripped like an old man at the grocery store.
Yeah.
So Palance didn't actually have the stamina to do this fight scene, but didn't want anyone else doing his stunts. So the entire fight scene, when they filmed it, uncut, was only 45 seconds. And they said that's why they put it all in slow-mo, so it can take up more screen time. There's only like 12 engagements, 12 sword strikes in the entire fight.
Dude, but my favorite sword thing in this whole movie is when when Palance goes to, I don't remember what the excuse was for it, but he was at like, people were like eating, and he was at like that like little like
the
guy calls
restaurant.
him out,
and the guy calls him out, and he pokes him in the chest with the sword, and
he
the
pushes
sword
him
just
over with the sword.
Yeah, the sword just bends up like it's made out of tinfoil when he pokes him.
That also happened to Voltan, Jack Palance's character, at the very beginning when he's creeping up on the guard and he stabs him in the back, but he basically just pushes him over with the dagger.
Yep.
That's all he does.
Yeah. Going back to that slow motion thing just quickly, that was, it's ironic because they were doing that because, like Will said, didn't have the stamina, and all it did was accentuate the fact that he had no stamina and he didn't, the choreography was just really bad. But it certainly is one of the, like, we talked about this on the show a little bit too. Like, there's a lot of shots in there, and I really, if you guys, not that you should do this because they're probably better off spending your time doing something else, but I would like to see you guys put this through the actual appraisal process.
It should.
And put a value on it.
Yes, please do.
Music, 20,000.
One of you will have to. One of you will have to be a guest and bring this because I'm not doing this without you.
Now, I do highly recommend that you watch the making of documentary that's out there with all the behind the scenes, and
it has to be better than the actual
it
film.
is fantastic. It's just good to hear everyone's real voice.
Yeah, that behind the scenes thing is really just them at a Denny's for like an hour.
Well, they didn't actually have too many
totally
sets. They only had the one set for the movie, right? Which was the one that's at the monastery. They just kept reusing it for different parts. Otherwise, like even the restaurant you described is actually just a table outside next to a thing. They couldn't afford, apparently, to build an interior. All the money went into the mat.
I want the Palance's paycheck.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I didn't look up to see what the budget on this thing was, but it reeks of no budget all the time, right? It definitely has that, like, we're going to film the entire film from different angles in the same place because it'll look a little different if we film it from this side or from that side. The woods are always kind of the same woods.
Yep.
Yeah, it really does feel like they filmed this in like a 500 square foot space.
Yeah. The angles that they use too are very poorly chosen because every angle in a fight scene shows. It's like when you watch a movie where guys are boxing and you see him, you clearly miss, but you hear the punch sound and the guy's head kicks back.
There is a couple of pretty bad fake hits.
Or like sword slices. There's one where the guy used the flat part of his sword to slice the guy's belly. It's not. Yeah, they didn't spend too much on that.
I think most of that is on the choreography, though. Like to be honest, like the choreography seems to be like the real downfall. A lot of those fight scenes, but I mean, and probably also Palance's total lack of stamina because he was 300 years old. But also, what a weird choice to make him the main bad guy because he doesn't come across as scary even once. He looks so old.
I don't know when he hisses at that wizard. That fixes his face. Oh, yeah. That's pretty scary.
You promised me.
This just makes me want to watch City Slickers.
There you go.
I don't know. In total earnestness, I did actually really enjoy watching this. Like I said, not for the right reasons, but I mean, this thing. I'm just like I'm clicking through it now, just looking at like random scenes here, and it really does have every single medieval fantasy trope imaginable.
Yeah.
And I do think that this movie encapsulates what Ernest Cline was doing with Ready Player One. This is one of those deep cut kind of movies that I think really nods to people who were raised in the 80s, because a lot of movies that we talk about or you find in the text are anyone who was raised in the 80s is going to know those films. But there are a lot of nods to really obscure films and TV shows and everything that was ever made in Asia that Albert knows with a level of encyclopedic knowledge that's ridiculous.
Oh man, I just clicked and it was the like hula hoop teleportation thing scene. So I agree. And
was that effect the same effect that was used to trap the three cats in Superman 2, like right at the beginning?
Yeah.
Yes, I think it was. Yes.
It's the same special effects that you used as a kid when you were playing with your family video camera, where you just hit the pause button and then you move out of the way and don't touch the camera and hit unpause. Oh, I disappeared.
Like, very carefully hit record again so that you don't jostle the camera at all.
Exactly.
I know you could just repeat like they did with Crow the Elf's rapid fire arrow shooting.
I do think so. To speak to what Will was just saying, I do think so. As somebody who was alive but not old enough to form memories in the 80s, I think
I don't know why that sounds funny, but it does. Sorry, go Joe.
One of the things I liked about Ready Player One so much is that it tied things I did recognize to things I was unaware of, and I went back and was exposed to a lot of stuff I never would have been because of the book. So while the deep cuts to you guys might be like deep cut memories to things you saw because you recorded a little bit too far ahead of what you wanted to watch on TV or whatever. But to me, they were like, oh, I've heard of this and this and this and this third thing. What is this? Who are they talking about? And then I just have to go look because I'm curious.
Yeah.
And I've definitely seen between Ready Player One and Albert, I have been exposed to a lot of the 80s I hadn't been before.
Well, I think it's safe to say if you haven't watched Hawk the Slayer, you probably can call this, air quotes, ringing endorsement from 4 people.
But definitely watch it on YouTube or somewhere where you don't have to pay for it.
Yeah, I predicted
for sure.
score somewhere between 87 and 92,000.
So
Okay.
you should be the guest on Film Appraisers for that, and you can argue for that score.
It's right between Sunset Boulevard and Gone with the Wind.
Oh man, what's the next movie?
Let's talk about the film that I brought. I brought Ferris Bueller's Day Off. So the log line for that is a high school wise guy is determined to have a day off from school despite what the principal thinks of that. I believe it's in Ready Player One novel. We definitely get it in a list. I think it's probably when he's listing John Hughes movies. I know that he mentions only the meek get pinched, the bold survive, my favorite quote from the film.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also a little bit of a mix-up. Now, I thought that in one of the chapters at the top of the leaderboard for Robotron, I thought it said Rooney eats it, which is what the graffiti is on the bus from Ferris Bueller. But when I tried looking that up, I think it said most versions now say something like Vice Principal Runberg is a total douchebag. So
Albert, why don't you take
what
that
happened
one?
there?
Yeah, it's funny you should bring that up. And this is one of the things, actually, so we didn't really talk about this, but we're going to have Ernie Klein on the show here on December 2nd. And this is one of the things we're going to ask him. There are a number of things in Ready Player One, the novel, that we felt were references or things that were maybe like errata like this where it got changed, and we want to just get clarification from the source as to why. This one's really interesting. So originally it did say Vice Principal Runberg is a total douchebag. It was changed to Rooney eats it, like you said. If you pick up a more current version of it, that's what it says. And the reason why, as to best of my knowledge, without verifying with Ernie, is that the Robotron game, and we actually went, this is how far we get into the weeds. I went and pulled the original owner's manual, like the operation manual for Robotron, to look this up. And you could put no more than 20 characters. So yeah, you could put more than 3 characters, but you couldn't go more than 20. And if you count up how many characters, Vice Principal Runberg is a total douchebag, it exceeds 20, right? So I think someone called him out on this and said there's no way somebody could have typed that into Robotron because you have a 20-character limit. He went back and said, okay, well, let me just throw Rooney eats it since, it's Ferris Bueller. We're all aware of it. It's kind of an iconic scene there at the very end. And so that's kind of the story behind it. But again, I have not verified that with Ernie, but we will this week, as a matter of fact.
In my theory, it was just a mistake. I think with all the pop culture references that are in the book, that he meant to put Rooney the first time. Because who the heck's Rumberg?
Yeah, probably his old vice principal from high school, and he called him out on it.
Yep.
Well, I think in the film, the Ferrari actually shows up in H's workshop. I think it's in the back with all the other vehicles that H has. Why do I like this film? John Hughes is a significant influence in my life. I know it'll never happen, but if I was ever in the position where I was making films, it's in the same way that Quentin Tarantino always does his films that inspired him, I would definitely make a John Hughes movie or a John Hughes inspired film. I'm a big subscriber to his writing and the films that he's directed. and all of his films, huge contributors to my upbringing. But Ferris Bueller, for me, stands out far above the rest. I've seen this film more times than I can even recall. I know you guys talked about in one of your basement episodes about doing the flick syncs, where you're not lip syncing or you're not. It's like karaoke, but for movies, and you get bonus points for the actions and the influence on the words and stuff like that. My memory's so horrible that I couldn't do it. But if I had to pick one, Ferris Bueller would be the one that I get the closest on. This was a staple in our household growing up, and not just for like me and my siblings, but our parents actually enjoyed this one too. So before I turn it over to you guys for a general conversation, there's two things about Ferris Bueller that I really like. I think first, they did an excellent job with the cast. I love the choices they made for the characters in this film, even down to the parents. Joe, we talked about the dad in our last episode when he showed up on Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. But I think John Hughes did a remarkable job really overseeing who plays the characters that he wrote. But second, I'll talk in terms of the film's narrative. I think the story and the plot work very well. They do a really good job just setting up Ferris's character right at the beginning and establishing that relationship between him and his sister. And you get that really early so that you can start working on some deep character development. And because that's a lot of what this film is about. There's like, after the first 10-minute mark until about 30 minutes left, there's a few plot points throughout. But overall, this is just a really deep character development story about just some likable or some interesting people. And then we get hit really hard with the two major drivers of the film. One, Cameron learns to face one of his biggest fears. And the second one is it's kind of the last time these friends are going to have this kind of day together. It's that on that particular day, their bond is by far the strongest, and it's only going to fade from there on out, which is really marking the sense of marking the start of like the end of their youth.
Mm-hmm.
So as funny as this film is, which is really funny, there's some really serious elements to it that I like. And one of my favorite scenes is the museum scene. I love that. I love that scene for a lot of reasons. And I actually watched the commentary from John Hughes on that, and he admits that scene was all just self-indulgence. He said that the place where they were at, the Chicago Art Institute, was a refuge for him as a kid in high school. But one thing he said was really interesting was the painting that we see Cameron stare at. Let's see, what is it called? Sunday Afternoon. I have to read this because I'm never going to remember this. Sunday Afternoon on the island of Le Grand Jatte. He said it's very much like making a movie. You don't know what you have until you step back from it and take a look at it. But he said specifically for Cameron, he's looking at the little girl, which is another picture that John Hughes puts in when he shoots. He shoots a few mother and child pictures in the Chicago Art Institute, specifically representing what Cameron is lacking. And he said, as you look at the child, the more Cameron looks in on it, there's nothing there. And he fears that the more you look in on him, the less you see, and there's nothing there, and the little girl's him. And I just love that. I think it's so great. It's a great scene. It's mocked all the time. Albert, I think I sent you a video once. So my kids were watching the new Muppet Babies.
Yep, I was about to bring that up.
They spoofed it even on that, which you would expect to get from the old Muppet Babies, but the new one, they did that too.
Yep.
Love it. Love this movie. I have a long list of quotes that are my favorite, but yeah, for me, this is my favorite film that he references in Ready Player One novel.
I mean, there are very few characters I feel more companionship with than Cameron. That is basically me, just like sad and self-loathing and laying in bed all the time, and just that whole thing. Cameron's existence is great. I went into a really for this show, I was just curious. I started looking at it a little bit. I went way too deep on that Ferrari. Like the kit car they built for it. Mm-hmm. So that thing's pretty cool. I saw that the one that got smashed at the end,
it was a Ford, wasn't it?
I mean, they all
just
built
put
them.
like a body of a Ferrari body on a Ford or something like that.
It's sort of so it's got bits and pieces of a bunch of cars. It's got like Ford motor and Ford suspension and Fiat pieces and Volkswagen pieces and a couple of GM pieces and a Jaguar. I mean, they really took everything to make that. But so they had 3 for the film. One stayed in good shape, one that was drivable, and that one they were very careful to not destroy. And that the one that they did destroy, the one that they just launched out of that garage into the woods, sold in 2010 for like 130 grand for like a shell of a car that I get had been restored to some degree, but I thought that was you don't normally see. So as a car dude, typically when you look at like movie cars, a lot of time they're just like one hero car that is borrowed or not at all what they're portraying. It's like a body on a thing, and it's a piece of junk mostly. It just looks cool. And then they trash a bunch of other cars. Like, there's not much care put into it. They spent a lot of time and money having this specific car built to mirror the 61 Ferrari GT that they wanted to portray on film. And that's not super common in films, but I was way into it. But yeah, like the whole film, I love the whole theory where, I don't know if Albert will, if you guys have seen this, I'm sure you have, with the whole theory where like Ferris is a figment of Cameron's imagination. I love that theory. That's like my favorite stupid. That's my favorite stupid film theory ever. It's so good.
It's a great theory because you kind of touched on it when you were talking about how you identified with Cameron. I think as the audience, that's who we're supposed to be identifying with, because he's the only character who's fleshed out and has real problems and is probably the most relatable in terms of how most people feel as teenagers. But if you think about the character of Ferris, he is a cartoon cutout of everything that is idyllic about people that we envy. So I love the whole Tyler Durden approach to, hey, this is just a figment of his imagination. It is him manifesting everything that's wrong with his life, whether it's parents who aren't supportive, whether it's having the courage to ask out girls, all of the anxieties and paranoias that I think most teenage boys experience. We all want to be Ferris. We all want to save Ferris, but at the end of the day, we're just all Cameron.
I'm gonna go ahead and argue with you on that a little bit, just a slight bit, because I have in my life been with one person in public that has had as much confidence and swagger as Ferris. And Will, it was definitely you. So you are Ferris.
Well, I think to some degree, even that is you just trying to be somebody else. Like, I mean, Albert's known me a really long time, so I was, by all accounts, an introvert growing up. And then at some point, you're just like, that is not the role I'm going to play in this life. I am going to play Ferris and, fake it till you can make it.
Yeah, and that's very true. I mean, and so you the character I wanted to be, and we talked when we brought up Ferris Bueller and we talked about it on the show.
Did you want to be Sloane? Did you want to be Sloane, Albert?
Sloane, yeah, it was Sloane.
Albert wanted to be Sloane, especially at that scene, especially the scene where Ferris picks him up at the school.
Yeah, no, I was thinking more of the pool scene, but
either way.
Yeah, no, I wanted to be Ferris. Like that was who I wanted to be in high school. Like it had a profound impact on me, and it was right after high school. Yeah, right after high school, I started dating a girl, and we were doing all kinds of just mischievous social engineering things together. A lot of it was stemming from this idea that she was Sloane and I was Ferris Bueller. And nothing really bad, right? It was all just silly stuff, but it was like I was trying to live that life at the time, and for good reasons. Like he was the character that I just liked the most and who I wanted to aspire to be at some point. But yeah, Will wasn't always like this, guys, believe it or not.
Well, I've only known him for a very short time, so I can't speak to prior Will, but current Will, very Ferris-like.
Yeah. It took years to work on his Arnold Schwarzenegger impersonation.
This film also is the film. I wouldn't say this is necessarily accurate, but in my head, anyways. I have not done the research, but this is the film that I always associate with the post-credit stinger, like right away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's at least one of the most famous ones. And I mean, even so much so as like in Deadpool, they've like totally copied it.
It's like a frame for frame, shot for shot kind of thing. Yeah, and that was
copied.
Sorry, not to plug the show, but the Cantina Cast, right? If you ever listen to that show, at the very end, Mike comes on and does his little spiel about, the copyright stuff and all that.
What's what and who's what?
Yeah, what's what and who's what and all that. That's exactly, this is where you ask him, he'll tell you he got the inspiration from the stinger here and the very end of Ferris Bueller's Day Off. So
the You're Still Here thing, yeah, it makes total sense.
Yep. You're
right?
Still Here? Right, that part.
Well, also the original theme song for this podcast was inspired from Ferris Bueller.
That's true. I forgot about that. You're right. That is true.
Yeah, Minuet Celebre is Luigi Boccherini, and that's the song you hear in the restaurant scene. That was our theme song. And there was a reason for that. It's because of Ferris Bueller.
Nice.
Look at Ferris Bueller dipping his fingers in all of our lives.
He's all over Igloo Media, right?
Yep. Save Ferris.
Well, Albert, you're up. You're up with your film. What did you bring us?
I brought, mine's not, it's a great movie by all accounts, I would say. But I was really trying to find something that had just kind of like a really staple, profound impact on Ready Player One, Ernest Cline, the whole Ready Player universe, or whatever they're calling this, Playerverse, or whatever the term is these days. And so what I picked was WarGames. It plays a pretty prominent role in the novel itself, outside of it just being a great movie. But let me read the log line here. It says, a young man finds a backdoor into a military central computer in which reality is confused with game playing, possibly starting World War III.
I can't believe that, Albert. They're standing right over there listening, and you're telling them about our back doors?
That's Eddie Dean. What's his name? Eddie
Deason.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah, sorry.
Plays Malvin. Is that his name?
Yeah, Malvin.
Yeah.
Malvin, yeah.
So
Mr. Potato Head.
A lot of people know him as Eugene in Grease, but for me and my family growing up, he's Wesley, the leader of the white team from Midnight Madness, which was Michael J. Fox's such a good movie. And Michael J. Fox's first film role. I think he actually appears in the credits as just Michael Fox or maybe Mike Fox or something like that. But yeah, that's whenever I see Eddie Deason on a film, I think of Midnight Madness. Always. He'll never shake that role for me.
Yeah, he's Grease for me first. Probably this a close second, and then I would even say like 1941 rolls in there for me as well.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah,
he's on the Ferris wheel. That whole part, but because he had the mannequin,
one
I
of the
think.
few actors to be in both Grease movies.
That's right. Yeah, lucky him.
But yeah, exactly right. Although Who's That Guy was a pretty cool song and cool writer.
And Let's Do It For Our Country.
Let's do it for yeah. Okay, we're gonna bowl tonight. Come on, let's get real here, guys. This is a great movie. No, so getting back to WarGames. So WarGames. So you were talking about flick syncs earlier, right? And this is where in the Ready Player One novel, they've got to go through and recite all the lines and act out the parts and get through all of it, and they get points and that whole thing. Well, this is the first gate. So in order to clear the first gate, Parzival Wade Watts has to go through and play the game of the movie of WarGames. And it's our first introduction really to this concept, which carries over and throughout the rest of the novel. But on top of that, so apart from the significance that it plays within the novel, for the first time we were seeing back in 1983 what a personal computer could possibly do. Right, we were able to see them. He's changing his grades. And he's playing these games and he's hacking, and we were getting introduced to like hackers and backdoors and all this stuff. And it was mind blowing. And it really pushed me in that direction. I mean, I went into IT, and I'm in IT to this day because of this movie. And I'm not alone. I mean, there were a number of people that will point back to this as well. And they were also capitalizing on the Cold War, right? I mean, arguably around the height of the Cold War. They were really capitalizing on that, and the Russians and Cuban missile crisis, was not that far along or not too far back. So yeah, there were a lot of things that were going for it. And then I think the third thing was just Ali Sheedy. Like that was, she's right up there with Alyssa Milano in terms of like my first crushes that I remember being like, wow, I like girls, and it's Ali Sheedy, right? She's one of them. But yeah, I mean, for those reasons alone, I know that sounds like a horny guy. I sound like a horny guy now, but.
I mean,
as a 10-year-old.
In fairness, right now, Ali Sheedy is making out with Matthew Broderick on the screen next to me. So
there you go.
There you go.
I see what you're saying, though. It made that's how you remember that. It's funny you mentioned that because yesterday I was in the car and Whitesnake came on the radio, and the first thing I thought of was the video Tawny Katan, and I was just like, man, that really changed the lives of a lot of young boys.
It did.
Yeah.
Like there's a time period in your maturation where the only thing you notice about the media you're consuming is the women in it. Right?
Yeah, all right.
It's not the proudest time period, but it definitely exists. So nothing wrong with that.
Yep.
But you can see why this would be one of Ernie's favorite films. I mean, the computer reference, like you said, the really obvious reference, but they're in the beginning where David's searching for like the login information and all that. It's almost like a scavenger hunt in itself, very similar to like Wade researching or deciphering the clues for the keys and stuff like that. I could see a lot of similarities between what happened in the novel Ready Player One and what happens in this particular film.
Yeah, and this reference, WarGames was it's referenced like 19 times in the novel. Again, it's got an entire.
It does feel like it's in there a lot.
It is, and they've got a whole chapter dedicated to it essentially while he's going through the flick sync. But
also, like one of my favorite chapters of the book. I don't know why I like that so much, but I love the idea of the flick sync thing.
Yeah,
that feels fun, and then I would do terrible at it.
And they have it now. Like we talked about this, and I think Will, you've done it. You've done this before. I've never done it before, but there are two competing apps or services out there today that allow you to do something very similar, not virtually, but you can do something similar to that.
You are correct, sir.
No, thank you.
So I have a question. I have a question for you, more experienced gentlemen. I watched this. When I watched this for this show, I watched this with somebody who's even like probably a bit younger than me, and we both had the same question because we've never experienced this era of computers.
Well, you see, Joe, you had to put your finger on the dial, and as you rotated it, the number would call.
I grew up. My dad is notoriously cheap, and I grew up until like mid high school, which was in the 2000s, with a rotary phone in the house as the only phone.
2000s.
Yes, for sure.
So the phone company forced you to.
I was a junior in high school in 2004 when we went to cordless phones. So that happened. But the computers. So all this like the gentle hacking that he was doing, where he was just like calling in and knowing the password and stuff. How close is that to like anything that really existed for like people to have at home?
So that. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Will, if you want to take that one.
Yeah, I would say it's pretty freaking accurate because back then there wasn't really network security. The security was really in anonymity, that people didn't know what numbers to dial. So if you had, because everyone's basically using dial-up at this point, right? So if you knew how to dial into a computer, right? If you knew where it existed in the world, it was a huge advantage because no one really had firewalls. No one had that type of security in place. No one was using, complex passwords, encryption. Yep. AES wasn't a thing yet. So, Albert, what's your take on that?
No, I was going to agree. Like it was a lot of it was security through ignorance, right? And people were writing down passwords very similar. I mean, you saw him when he goes into the principal's office, he pulls that thing open, and this happens today. People have Post-its with the password on there, but the passwords didn't have any complexity, and many times you could just get through by brute force. Today, brute force takes a lot longer, and it's difficult because of complexities. But back then,
my introduction to computers. So I did actually have a very old computer when I was very young. My grandfather gave us I want to say it was a Micron branded 486. Something. Yeah. But like my like experience with like trying to skirt what the rules say you should with computers didn't start until like Windows 98 or so. So this is very different than anything I've ever played with at all. Really.
Yeah.
I
would say by
way.
then it was starting. I wouldn't say mature, but people were well aware of things that needed to be in place, like firewalls and all that.
You needed tools and stuff to play around with that. You couldn't just show up and type a password in and then be totally in somebody else's computer and just like click on grades and change them.
No, that was really it. I mean, you had all you needed were two pieces of information. You needed the phone number and you needed a password, right? And a lot of times they didn't have like usernames. It was just literally a password to get in.
And remember that this is an era where they weren't like segmenting networks or segmenting servers. I mean, it was just one PC talking to other PCs. So it's not like you were penetrating like an intranet and then trying to get to a specific machine or a specific database.
Right.
You're just trying to get into that one computer. So to Albert's point, if you did it, yeah, you could definitely make that happen. In fact, Albert and I talked extensively in this episode about how accurate just about everything in this film was in terms of the way they approached hacking, whether it was phone freaking, use of that Walkman in order to bypass a simple card reader that could still be done.
That just happened on screen. I just watched that. Great timing. I just watched the Walkman. I guess I'm not surprised, but it was definitely knowledge I didn't have. I was going to look it up. I thought I could look up to see how accurate this film is, but I thought instead I will make Will and Albert explain to me why this film is either accurate or inaccurate in its computer technology. But this film does seem very centered around like the nerdy, we'll say like computer porn, like kind of life. But it's really good. So I've watched this with a few people in my life because this is definitely one of the ones I go back to a lot. I don't really know why. I think it's just because it's a very, like, regardless of all the accuracies and Arrow specific stuff, it's just a fun movie. It's just really good. Mm-hmm. I feel like there's very little, like, the accuracy of the tech comes up once in a while, and how centered it is around like that scene where they introduce Joshua and they just like zoom in on like the lights and the little LEDs and the little buttons. It's like, it's very, I can't think of a better way to put it, like computer porny, but like there is just so many lines so many lines you've heard elsewhere, like the "Would you like to play a game?" Like stuff you've heard all over the place in all kinds of references, like the pop culture influence of this. People who've never seen it before are like, oh, that's where this came from. Yeah. Oh, that's where that happened. It really lands in a lot of different spaces. Yeah.
I think one piece that we haven't talked about too is the whole AI piece of it, right? That component of artificial intelligence. And, even today, by today's standards, I don't think some of this obviously still could happen. It probably will happen at some point, right? But they were toying and skirting around this idea that at some point something would become sentient like this. And the whole message of the only way to win the game is to not play the game. So it's speaking to, the Cold War and to, there's the whole nuclear war aspect of it all and whether that's, morally right or not. But then you've got the AI infused in here as well. And this would later on, we saw artificial intelligence starting with this movie came out all over the place. And you can go look at Terminator, right? When that movie came out here.
I was just going to say.
A year later, sorry.
This film was like the alternate reality where the AI decided it wasn't going to keep going, and the Terminator is the reality where it decided to blow everything up.
Yeah,
right. Like this could totally be the prequel to Terminator that didn't happen.
Yeah, in fact, if you look back historically, this film was pre-screened by then President Ronald Reagan, who was a friend of the family of the director. So when he watched it, he actually called his national security advisor the next day and then addressed Congress, and that formed.
This is like the Star Wars thing, right?
Yeah. Right. It all started with this film that he saw this and said, hey, can this happen? And they were like, yep, that could totally happen.
Well, and they actually told him it happened. It happened twice, actually, prior to this. And we not to get into it because we're probably going to be way over on time, but on the episode when we covered this, we actually gave two examples where this had really happened already. Once was what happened was we almost went to World War III because of a computer malfunction. The first time it was the wrong card was used or something like that. And then the other time it was literally just a computer glitch. And they went all the way. I'll let Will do take us to DEFCON 5 line because he seems to enjoy that. But
all right, flush the bombers, get the subs in launch mode. We are DEFCON 1.
There you go. Thank you. Will Wilkins, everybody. But yeah, so this was went pretty
General
far.
General
Behringer, who's actually based on a real character as well. Captain Newt, I think. Or no,
I've also
Jason Bernard.
Like everybody how I've watched this movie with, I've had to explain that DEFCON does not work the way they think it is. It's the opposite direction. I don't know when everybody got backwards on DEFCON, but this film gets it right. But right, because it counts down, right? Because one is
it's because if in the military sense, threat cons work the opposite way. So DEFCONs work down, threat cons work up. But we've never actually gone to DEFCON 1. We've only gone to DEFCON 2. I think we covered that in the show twice, right? Once in
Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yep, and then once after 9/11, I think we only went to DEFCON 3.
Yeah, it's everybody who I've watched this with gets confused when it's counting down. But I don't know if that's because also after after 9/11, they introduced the threat level thing, like the color code.
The National Security Alerting System by DHS, which is no longer a thing, but it was, where you would go from like Bert to Ernie because it was all color coded.
Yes,
we're almost to Elmo.
Get ready.
Yeah, I think that also kind of, the way that worked, I don't remember what the colors were, but I think that also kind of reinforced a count up instead of count down kind of mentality. I don't know, but I did appreciate, I didn't like watching it this time. I definitely have noticed, like, this is one I've definitely seen movies where it goes the wrong way. I've definitely seen films where like the threat level or whatever might go up instead of down. But like you said, ThreatCon, which I've never even heard that word before, ThreatCon, goes up. So,
Hey, Iron Eagle's a great movie. Stop talking about it.
I watched so much Iron Eagle as a kid. Oh. I love those. That's
Air Force.
That's the Air Force-y.
It is the Air Force version of Navy's Top Gun.
It's got like Ironsides in it, right?
It's got a great soundtrack.
It's got the dude from Enemy Mine in it.
Chappie.
I love that movie.
Yeah,
Enemy Mine. My childhood best friend. My childhood best friend, who is the same age as me, right? And I have no idea how this happened. His like all-time favorite movie is Enemy Mine, and it comes up constantly.
It's good. It's a great film. Now the dummy they use when they toss that kid around is pretty lame, but
Yeah.
everything else in that is really solid on that film. Hey, a couple things in y'all's conversation about WarGames, a couple things that y'all left out. One, the Century 21 yellow sport coat. How long's it been since you've seen one of those?
Been a while. Yep.
Wow, that was a flashback. And then also, I think it was with the music that really took me out of it, because it felt like it wasn't the choice of the music. It was where in the scenes they put the music. It was like there would be a really, really tense scene, but it'd be like an upbeat military band playing, like it's like the opening credits, or it just did that throughout a lot. They could have made those intense scenes much more intense had they just matched the music. I felt like the music's great for the film. It was mismatched with some of those scenes. It felt like it was at odds with the narrative almost.
Yeah, and they wanted that they wanted that music, that inspiring like marching music throughout all of it, and they do use that. I thought you were going to get into the beepers and talk about Video Fever, which is an amazing song, as well as History Lesson. But
here we go.
Will doesn't want to hear this.
I do not want to hear this.
They actually did a 35th anniversary soundtrack. You can buy it. And it has all of the music, including the WarGames. There's actually a song called WarGames that was released by Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Was never used in the movie. If you go listen to it, it's specifically talking about the movie. It's a weird situation. We won't get into why that didn't happen. But
WarGames. Talking about it. WarGames.
WarGames.
That is not how it goes.
Now, for some reason, all I can think of is like a Tom Jones WarGames theme.
No, it's actually a really good Crosby, Stills, and Nash song. To be honest,
I was thinking more of the lounge singer from Bill Murray.
Yes,
WarGames.
Star Wars talking about.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a picture up on my wall that somebody, it's a guy that owns a shop here in Austin, over by the Austin Comics and Books, and he does hand drawings, and he did one that I actually purchased. It is the Cantina Band. What are those guys? The Modal Nodes.
Modal Nodes, yeah.
But it's Bill Murray singing lead.
Nice.
It's a very remarkable picture that I'm very proud of, sitting right here in the office.
Hey, we didn't mention either. Like Michael Madsen is one of the guys at the very beginning. Yeah, Mr. Blonde, in one of his first roles, and then you had Judge Reinhold, who really hadn't been much of anything at this point, but he was the guy that came to unlock the door. He was the Army, or I guess the Army guy, or I don't know. Was he Army? Well,
no, they're all Air Force. Good Lord,
was he wearing green?
Well, because Air Force guys wear green sometimes. Like,
I've only seen him in blue. That probably stands out in the air. But so that was Judge Reinhold.
Why do your fatigues have clouds on them?
I don't think the blue suits are supposed to be air camouflage.
That's right. There's never people flying Albert. Civilians.
Everybody
This
gets dressed up
frickin'
in their Sunday best blue suits and goes flying around so that they blend into the sky.
What is this pattern from the wallpaper of Toy Story here with all these clouds on
The
them?
clouds, I can't see them.
So I will say that I cannot find it online, but if somebody was to go on Etsy or whatever and make this, I would. Oh, I bought worse. I mean, I did buy the Hawk the Slayer soundtrack.
You definitely
but
bought worse.
if somebody would make the sign at the very beginning of this film that says anyone urinating in this area will be discharged, I will buy that, because that stands to me. It just sticks out, and there's no explanation for it. I guess maybe because they're in that for 24 hours, people go take a leak in the hallway. I have no idea why that sign would be up.
I forgot about that. I'm in the process of making a Whopper shirt. Like, I have the logo down, and I just want to slap it on a T-shirt. So if anybody's interested, let me know. It'll be on our site.
I'd wear it. Listen, I wear a lot of shirts I probably shouldn't wear, but I would wear that one.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff you should be wearing that you don't wear.
That's true. I do wear my teal blue basement shirt a lot. That's probably my favorite network shirt because the colors are just a perfect combination.
Yeah, rad is the word we usually try to use.
Yeah, I mean, so speaking of rad, I recently got called out on how often I say rad. Somebody recently said to me, "Do you just really like that word, or is there something wrong with you?"
I've got Tourette's. Leave me alone.
Hey, Albert, I think it's only appropriate we close this segment on WarGames and talking about the great corn debate and how one butters corn. I think it's important we get the film appraiser's opinion.
When I watched this, I've never noticed the corn thing until this watch through, and the person I was watching it with immediately cued in on the corn thing, which was so weird. I've never seen that before in my life.
So, Will, you're gonna have to summarize for those who are unfamiliar with what's going on. What is it that you're talking about with the corn and the way you apply the butter to the corn?
Yeah, so in the movie, the dad is commenting that this corn is raw. And the wife's like, "It's not raw. It's rare. You can just taste the vitamin C." Yeah, because it's raw. And they're buttering the corn by buttering a slice of white bread and then rolling the corn onto the bread, which is how I buttered corn as a child.
Oh,
but
my goodness.
Albert said is insane, and no one's ever done that.
This proves that the father is genuinely the smartest person in the film. by far.
So the story behind this is one of the writers knew a person a long time ago who used to butter his corn this way. He would take and for those of you that don't know, he would take a piece of bread, take the butter, spread it all over the bread, and then take the corn, stick that on top, almost like you're making a corn sandwich or a corn hot dog, and then roll the corn on the butter that was spread on the bread, right? And so it's just so awkward, and they linger on this shot for so long.
This isn't awkward. This is genius.
Long.
This is genius. All right, so here are your alternatives. You have I'm going to take a slice of butter and then awkwardly take a knife and spread it all over the corn and try to butter the whole thing, or you have the sacrificial
liquid
stick
butter.
Of butter.
No, liquid butter.
Parquet.
No, get out of here. Get out of here with liquid butter crap. That's not real. And you roll the corn on the sacrificial butter, or you're gonna have, who doesn't like buttered bread? It's carbs and butter. Who doesn't like that? So you butter some bread, you roll the corn in it, and then you have when you're done, you have buttery corn and buttery bread, and no one's complaining.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong
totally
with it. It's
perfect.
the right way to do it. And you can do it while you're eating the corn. You can just repeat the process to continue
over and
the
over.
Buttery pop.
This is genius. This was a revelation for me. I've never noticed it before watching this until this watch through, but I have changed my life. This is a new post buttered bread and pre-buttered bread line has been drawn in Joe Kane's lifestyle.
I'm glad to hear that.
I couldn't do it because the first time I tried that, I would giggle like Beavis and Butthead for 45 minutes after doing that. So
I don't think butter. Oh yeah, butter that.
Well,
bread.
guys, I think it's safe to say that these films, for better or for worse, definitely had some sort of similar impact on us either then or now. A lot like they did with Ernest Cline, the author of Ready Player One, and the characters that he writes about in this novel. So, Will, Albert, this has been really fun, guys. A nice trip down nostalgia lane, and I'm even more excited now about finishing Ready Player 2 and seeing what films are going to be mentioned in that one, or possibly re-mentioned.
I'll just leave you with this. I know you were a John Hughes fan. Because I've heard you talk about it before.
I snuck ahead and read that chapter.
I was going to say, because there is several chapters that you are really, really going to enjoy in Ready Player 2.
I just had, when I got the autograph book in the mail the other day, I just opened it up and it fell at the first page of the chapter where they go to a certain planet. I was like, whoa, what's this? And so I started reading it in advance.
Yeah.
That was a wise decision. In fact, the movie's reviewed, even though Ernest does revisit many of the pop culture references from Ready Player 1 and Ready Player 2, none is more in the forefront than Ferris Bueller's Day Off. It has a dozen direct references and over 30 indirect references to the movie.
Excellent.
In Ready Player 2.
Yeah.
Hawk the Slayer sadly omitted.
So you're telling me he made a better job here?
Oh goodness, that's a mistake right there. Well, Will, Albert, you guys, you talked about it briefly, but you've got something special going on. See, it'll be this week, December 2nd. You've got a fun show. It'll actually be part of your archives when this airs later this week. But tell us about what you've got coming up on The Basement. Yeah,
so I'd met Ernie Klein a few times. I've stalked him a few times too. And
meat is a very
meat is in Stockton. No, so one time a few years back, I just happened to mention, hey, I've got The Basement podcast, and he offered. He was like, hey, let me know when you guys are, let's talk about it. I'll give you my email address and I'll come on to the show. And I was thinking, there's just no way. And so I just kept in contact every couple of months and just reached out and said, hey, you want to do this? And he finally responded back and said, hey, you know what? The book's coming out. Part 2's coming out. Hit me up when the book comes out and we'll talk about it. I basically said, I promise I'll do it. He is true to his word. I reached out to him and he said, yep, just let me know. Let's work something out. Gave me some dates. So cut to the chase. We are going to have Ernie Klein, the author of Ready Player 1, Ready Player 2, and Armada, on the show this Wednesday, December 2nd. He's going to come on and he's going to be a host just like any other, you guys have been. They're going to come on. Yeah. We've got a couple of things we want to get out of the way and clear up from the first book. Then we're going to break down the cut scene, which is the very first piece, which is essentially like a, epilogue or prologue. And then we're going to go into, we've got some questions that we've collected from a number of different sources, like the official Ready Player 1 Facebook group. There's a Discord channel. Our Patreon members have submitted questions. So he's just going to hang out with us and be a part of the show as a third host, which is going to be just absolutely, I can't even believe it's like 3 days away, to be honest.
I really can't wait. I really can't wait.
It should be totally exciting. What I like most about it, and Albert hit on it, is that we're not doing a traditional interview like you would typically see. And I got to think that at this point, Ernest Klein's been on this media blitz for like the last month. And it just seems like people are regurgitating the same questions to him. So we're trying to do our best to ask questions that I think are a little deeper and aren't as surface level as you've seen in many of the interviews he's done in the past.
Yeah, so we'll be doing a live recording of that on the 2nd, and then you can we'll release it it'll be on YouTube forever, but then we'll release the podcast version of that just a few days later as well.
I'm going to go ahead and submit my question. I need it phrased like this, and I think this is a very important question to listeners of The Basement and the folks that are on Discord. I need you to ask him, there can be only one, Fruity Pebbles or Captain Crunch?
Oh, that's a solid question.
It is a pretty solid question.
It's a very solid question.
I want him to settle it once and for all of us.
I mean, if he doesn't say Fruity Pebbles, he's wrong. So
that's debatable.
I don't know. I mean,
there is a Captain Crunch reference in Ready Player 1, so
there's more than a handful of
there you go.
That's fine.
References.
That's fine.
That's a good one. I'll add it on the list, and if we get time there, I'll work it in there.
Yeah, is it variations of Captain Crunch? Because I'm an all berries man myself.
Oh, here we go. No.
Yes. So I don't think all berries counts because it omits the razor blades that are the original Captain Crunch.
Only I'll reference our friend. Is it For Malice? Is that his name?
Yeah.
He always tells people when they complain about the shards of glass that is Captain Crunch, it only affects you if you have little baby kitten gums. So that's what.
That's not true. Nobody on the planet has ever eaten Captain Crunch and been like, "Wow, that was a comfortable mouthfeel."
I think they have. Yeah, I think it heals gingivitis, actually. And I am a doctor. I'm an actual doctor.
Well, I'm a captain, and I say
just
Captain
not a medical
Crunch.
doctor.
So,
Exactly
Will, you're Captain Crunch, right?
I am Captain Crunch all day.
I am too. It
You,
sounds
sir,
like these two guys are Fruity Pebbles.
monster. You're both monsters.
Monsters, yeah. No, it's
Hey,
Fruity
I'm not
Pebbles.
kicking Fruity Pebbles out of bed. I mean,
Listen, I will eat. I bought a 2.5 pound bag of generic brand Fruity Pebbles the other day, like a month ago, and I ate them all in a single Saturday, and it was the best Saturday I've ever had.
The thing with Fruity
I like the way
Pebbles-
he said the other day, a month ago.
The thing with Fruity Pebbles is it's the only cereal that comes with instructions. It says open box 2, dump in toilet.
No, that's not true. That's corn. That's
Listen,
That's not
listen.
fair.
If
Candy
the
corn.
only way I could have Fruity Pebbles out of a toilet, I would do it because they're that good.
That's great
Fruity-
guts.
Fruity Pebbles stopped putting like toys inside the boxes. They just put a syringe with like insulin in there now.
That's probably
You're gonna need
fair.
this.
And that, folks, is a live. That is Discord live right there. That is what Discord looks like. Well, guys, thank y'all for coming on, gentlemen. It was great to have you on. I'm really looking forward to doing this, and it was just as fun as I thought it'd be. So thanks for taking the time and joining us here.
No, thank you guys for inviting us, and for your listeners, you guys are coming on to our show too. So you guys need to get through Ready Player 2 so we can get you on the show to host and chime in on some of this pop culture stuff. So we're gonna do it all over again.
Yeah, maybe we should just do one episode that's a single film and kind of blend them both.
We can do that. I mean, we got bonus stage episodes, so maybe we can work something like that as well.
Yep.
I'm down for whatever. I would love to.
Yep, very much looking forward to it. Well, Joe, we've got our next episode. We're going to do our Christmas episode, but we're going to do it a little bit earlier in the month than we typically do. The reason for that is because we are finally getting back to reactions.
Because
and
there's almost movies happening again.
we almost have a movie that's coming out. And we're not going to tell you which film it is, but if it's one that was supposed to be the anchor of this year's box office before COVID derailed everything and everyone's plans. But we're going to do reactions to that. And then later in the month, we'll do our Christmas episode where, Joe, I think we've finally settled on we're probably going to talk about your favorite Christmas
I'm going to
film.
inflict punishment upon everybody by picking my favorite Christmas film. So get ready.
And I think I'm going to bring on my favorite superhero. He's not a superhero. Well, maybe he is. But my favorite superhero-related Christmas film is what I will bring on. If anybody wants to get in touch with us, we've got a multitude of social media outlets where they can. Twitter is @FAppraisers. We don't check it that often because, well, Twitter. Instagram @FilmAppraisers. Email filmappraisers@gmail.com. And the website is eargluemedia.com/TFA. You can also go to eargluemedia.com/Discord and pretty much do exactly what we just did with the Fruity Pebbles versus Captain Crunch. It's a great place to get
Sneak peek.
information. It's a sneak peek. That information, stuff about our shows, stuff about our guests, Albert, Will, everybody's on there all the time. And so it's a good place to come and have fun.
Yeah, come in and then just lay down the gauntlet. Come in, don't say anything else. Go straight to the cereal channel and say Fruity Pebbles sucks and see what happens.
Yes,
You
right.
will meet my wrath.
A lot of people's phones will be blowing up after that.
While you're online getting your Discord invite and checking out our Instagram and Twitter, etc., and also checking out the basement, please feel free to jump onto iTunes, whatever, and rate and review the show. It's much appreciated, and we can't change or get better unless you tell us what you like and don't like. So that's where we are.
Well said. Well, guys, that's going to do it for us here at the Film Appraisers. So thank you all for listening. Goodbye.
The Film Appraisers was created by Josh McRae, produced by Joe Kane and Josh McRae, graphics by Albert Padilla, and voiceover by Morgan Marshall.
The thoughts, expressions, views, opinions, and the like are those of the guests and the host of the Film Appraisers and do not represent the opinions of any entity associated with the creation or distribution of the films discussed herein.